When most players think of flying in Valve's 2011 breakout single-player puzzle platformer first-person shooter game Portal 2, they think of four main things: momentum, aerial faith plates, gel, and excursion funnels. During a casual playthrough, these four mechanics are the only ways to gain semi-sustained aerial movement. However, this video is about none of those. In fact, they are barely used at all. We instead have to rely on a glitch powered by one of the most absurd, dangerous, and unlikely movements in the game: crouching. The crouch flight glitch, or CFG for short, is a piece of movement tech that allows speedrunners to soar over bottomless pits, catch cubes mid-air, and completely skip certain chambers. CFG takes advantage of the excursion funnels introduced in Chapter 8. Normally, when you enter a funnel, the game gives you anti-gravity and pushes you along the funnel's direction. This effect is usually removed the moment you exit. Behind the scenes, the game keeps track of how many funnels you're inside. Entering a funnel adds 1 to a counter, and exiting subtracts 1. As long as that value is greater than 0, you keep the anti-gravity. Speedrunners discovered setups that trick the game into thinking you're in 2 funnels at once. When you exit, the counter only drops to 1 instead of 0, which means the game still thinks you're inside a funnel and the anti-gravity stays active. Some of the CFG setups in Chapter 8 look like this, or this, and even this. Since excursion funnels don't appear until much later in the game, I'm using a console command through Source Auto Record, a speedrunning mod for Portal 2, to give myself CFG right from the very first chamber. So, with that out of the way, let's get into it. The way that CFG works in-game is that when you are walking on the ground, nothing changes, but as soon as you jump, you can't get back down to the ground without a sloped surface to bounce off of. After Wheatley crashes, you have to get downward velocity to enter the vault, so by jumping up to these stairs and ramping off the underside, we can fly over to the exit. Cube momentum is the first chamber that I really got stuck on, but with the help of Adam from the Portal 2 speedrunning community, I was able to progress. After grabbing Wheatley, we come across the first of 2 challenges in this room. The first challenge is getting down here, but after sloping off of some stairs, we manage that quite fine. The second challenge involves getting into the incinerator after we wake up GLaDOS, but I was able to find some geometry that I could stand on and then jump off of one of GLaDOS's rings to get a good slope down into the incinerator. And because we regain control of our character just before she drops us in, she leaves us floating in the sky, so we have to get a bit clever. The first few chambers of Chapter 2 are pretty easy, with only some minor sloping needed. However, when we come across the aerial faithplate chambers, we're gonna have to get a bit more creative. Common trend with this challenge involves jumping up to the ceiling and skipping the whole chamber. We see this a lot more in Chapter 6 onwards, but it's present before then as well. Another trick that we use throughout the run involves dropping a prop, like a cube or a turret, on top of our heads to get downwards velocity. In some chambers with turrets, we have to trigger them and then wait until their view resets before we can move, so that we have a little bit of extra time to move around. Throughout the escape sequence, we have to utilize things like catwalks, pipes, and Wheatley's rail lines in order to both gain and lose height. This is another chamber that I was stuck on for quite a while, but it turns out you can solve it by just dropping a turret on your head, like the other one. Now, unfortunately, the ending section of this part of the chamber, Tube Ride, is impossible. Just like in Wake Up, you regain control of your character before dropping, but unlike Wake Up, there is nothing for you to slant off of, as you are stuck in an invisible box of invisible walls. So, this is the only impossible part of the run, but we are forced to get rid of CFG and then immediately give it back to ourselves afterwards. Core is another chamber that I thought was impossible, but using a couple clever pieces of the wall and then getting on top of our cell, when Wheatley starts to bring the exit elevator up, we can fly over and land on top of it. The dialogue trigger to start the next sequence is on top of the elevator by just a little bit, so by crouching, we can actually start his next dialogue. After he brings up the elevator, we have to walk off, go off the same slant to get more downwards velocity, and then squeeze in just underneath the elevator so that we can start going down the chute to hit the trigger to start the next chamber. If we stayed in the elevator, this chamber would be impossible, because the floor drops out underneath us and then leaves us hanging there with nothing to ramp off of. As we progress through Old Aperture, you'll notice that a lot of the chambers become very open, often having the entrance and the exit visible from each other. This means that we can jump up and ramp off of a lot of things, like pipes or stairs, to just completely skip the chamber. We're also able to just completely skip grabbing GLaDOS, as we're able to jump up and enter the elevator without even grabbing her. As we move throughout Chapter 8, where we usually get CFG and speedruns, most of the chambers I go through the normal speedrun route. However, because entering an excursion funnel removes CFG, I have to take a couple of detours to make sure that that doesn't happen. For example, in this chamber, we usually get rid of CFG, but I found that if I get just enough slope off of this pipe, I can make it over the conversion funnel and to the finish. This is another chamber where I have to make sure that the turrets see me, and then wait until they recalibrate so that I can make it through safely. Otherwise, they would shoot me. The second part of this chamber was one of the more fun chambers to solve, because I had to find a way to get around this excursion funnel. Luckily, by jumping up and then sloping off of this pipe, I can very slowly avoid both the void out trigger and the death trigger in the pit, and then hit a trigger to open the ending and then fly through, which you'll see now. In this chamber, I have to wait before flying over, because once Wheatley opens the chamber, we have to look at the little robot at the end, otherwise the exit does not open. There were a couple solutions that I found for the last chamber in Chapter 8, however, the one that I liked the best involved jumping up into the corner of the room where, weirdly, the turrets can't see you, waiting until they recalibrate, flying over behind them, and then getting one of them to shoot you just barely enough to give you the slightest amount of downward velocity, and then it's just a waiting game until we fall slowly towards the exit. Moving into the part where he kills you, none of the routing is changed until the very end as we enter Wheatley's boss chamber. Because CFG is used entirely through this chapter, the only part that doesn't usually have it is the boss fight with Wheatley. Getting up to Wheatley's chamber was another part that I struggled with because the trigger to load the next level is on the floor. However, getting some clever momentum off of some geometry in this area allows us to go through a portal and conserve the momentum, letting us hit the trigger. As we move into the boss fight with Wheatley, I'm just going to let it play out. This chamber was a lot of fun as it required me to use my brain to figure out unconventional routes to grab the cores and attach them to Wheatley. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed. I put a lot of time and effort into making this video, and this was a challenge that I've been thinking about doing for a while. If you enjoyed, and if you want to, please like and subscribe, and leave any other suggestions that you have for future videos in the comments. I also stream Speedrunning Portal 2 live on my Twitch every Friday at 7:30 PM PST, so I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.